then yes, as the video title says, that is going to kill your gains. You'll keep your leanness, but you're not going to add any real size, and your strength gains are also going to be significantly compromised. What's up guys, Sean Nalawani, RealScienceAthletics.com, and in this video today I want to explain why going too far with the whole gaintaining or main-gaining philosophy, whatever you want to call it, why that could potentially be slowing down your muscle building progress or even preventing you from making any real muscle building progress at all, depending on exactly how you're implementing it. So for those of you who are newer to this, the idea behind gaintaining is that instead of running more traditional bulking and cutting cycles where you switch between definite periods of being in a calorie surplus versus being in a calorie deficit, instead of that, you just eat around your maintenance level and you focus on slowly adding muscle without gaining fat. And there are different approaches to this. So some people will say that you should eat literally right at your exact calorie maintenance level with no surplus whatsoever, whereas for others, they'll still consider a small surplus, maybe 100 or 200 calories above maintenance. They'll still consider that as main gaining, and they'll only classify it as bulking if you're going into higher surpluses of, let's say, 400 or 500 calories or more above maintenance. So the first question is, do you actually need a calorie surplus in order to build muscle? And a lot of people out there will give a black and white yes or no answer to this question, but the real answer is that it depends, okay? It depends on your current body composition, and it depends on what exactly you mean by build muscle. So are we talking about building some muscle, but not necessarily all the way to your maximum potential? Or are we talking about 100% fully optimized muscle growth? So in order to build muscle, you need protein, which gives your body the raw materials to construct new muscle tissue, and you need calories to actually carry out that construction process. Remember that calories are ultimately just energy. So for protein, obviously you're gonna get that from your diet. 0.8 to 1 grams per pound of body weight daily is a pretty safe minimum, and you can go higher than that if you prefer. And then for calories, you can either get that from your diet by eating in an energy surplus, or you can get it by using the calories that your body already has stored in your existing fat tissue. So yes, you can build muscle without a calorie surplus if you have enough stored fat available that your body is willing to burn off and to divert to new muscle growth. So at higher body fat levels, this is no problem at all. You have plenty of stored fat available, and if there's a strong enough training stimulus in place and you have enough protein there, your body will have no issue with reallocating some of those fat calories and swapping them out for new muscle growth. So if you're overweight, you can eat in a calorie deficit and lose fat while gaining muscle at the same time. If you're skinny fat, then you can do the same thing. Even if you're already in decent shape, but you're just carrying a bit of extra fluff, maybe let's say you are something like 15 or 20% body fat, then you can also do a standard cutting phase. And if everything is on point in terms of your training and nutrition, then you can probably gain some muscle while you lean down at the same time. However, and this is a big however, it's very important to understand that as you get leaner and leaner, your body is going to become less and less willing to break down stored fat and use those calories for muscle growth, because you only have a finite amount of stored fat available, and fat is obviously important for health and for survival. So if you're truly eating at maintenance, meaning your calorie intake exactly matches your calorie expenditure, then the only place that your body can get the calories from to build new muscle is going to be from your fat tissue. It can't just create energy out of thin air. And you can't just endlessly get leaner and leaner while gaining more and more muscle. Okay, you're not going to cut down to 10% body fat and then gaintain for the next 5 years and just continue losing fat while gaining more and more muscle. It doesn't work like that. Your body eventually is going to hit a point where it's going to say, okay, I get that there is this stressor in the environment and that it's a potential threat, which is your workouts, but I can't sacrifice any more body fat because I just don't have enough. And even if I do add more muscle, it's gonna require more calories to maintain it. So unfortunately, we just have to make a trade-off and we have to leave things as is. Remember that your body is ultimately just a survival and replication machine, and your hardwired muscle building and fat burning mechanisms really don't give a crap about your desire to look like your favorite Instagram fitness influencer. Your body is just trying to find the most balanced state that it can so that it can survive in the environment based on the external stressors that are there and based on the calories and the nutrients that are coming in and based on how many calories it has currently stored. So it is not true that you can literally eat at maintenance where calorie intake precisely matches calorie expenditure and continue gaining more and more muscle over the long term once you're already relatively lean. Okay, if you're on PEDs, then that's going to influence this to some extent because that's going to change the overall muscle building environment in your body, and recompositioning is going to be a lot more feasible, especially if you have good genetics to go along with it. But for natural trainees, especially with around average genetics, it's just not going to happen. And this is the big problem that I often see. People who are too caught up in the idea of maintaining an aesthetic physique, they want to gain muscle, but they're terrified of gaining any body fat at all. And so they end up just keeping their calories too low, even though they're already pretty lean. And they just end up spinning their wheels and not really adding any meaningful size over the long term. And I know some people are going to disagree with this in the comments, and they're going to say, nope, not true. I've always eaten at my calorie maintenance level, and I've gained muscle just fine, so you don't know what you're talking about. But the reality here is that no one actually knows in the first place what their exact calorie maintenance level is, since really that's impossible to track. There are way too many factors that influence that, and it also fluctuates from day to day. And then on top of that, no one knows exactly how many calories they're consuming either. Even if you weighed all of your foods right down to the precise microgram, there would still be variation there. And when you weight train hard and intensely, your appetite is going to be stimulated from that. And what very often happens is that as long as someone isn't going out of their way to restrict their calories, then they'll just naturally consume a bit more food throughout the day to compensate and to match the hunger that they're feeling. And since they're still keeping their diet under control overall and they're just eating to satiation, but they're not indulging further than that, they think that that means that they're eating at maintenance when they are in fact in a small calorie surplus. They just don't realize it though. Even if it's just a couple hundred extra calories, and that's because their body is calibrating its hunger cues to encourage them to eat more because of that extra training stress. It wants more energy so that it can build muscle without needing to sacrifice body fat. And just think of it this way. If someone gains body weight, period, aside from the possibility of a bit of water and glycogen weight, but if they are consistently gaining overall body weight over the longer term, by definition, that means they're in a calorie surplus. So if somebody starts out at 150 pounds and then after X amount of time, now they weigh 165 and they say that they did it by gaintaining and just eating at maintenance, you know that can't possibly be true. There had to be an energy surplus there for them to now be carrying more total mass. So what does this mean for you in practical terms? Well, again, if you're overweight or skinny fat, or you're in decent shape, but you're just carrying a moderate amount of excess fat, then yes, you can eat in a calorie deficit, lean down, and if your training your diet is on point, then you'll gain muscle during that process. And the amount of muscle that you'll gain specifically, that's gonna depend on factors like how much body fat you're actually carrying, what your training experience is, your diet and workout structure, your genetics, etc. But once you are relatively lean, okay, 12, 11, 10% body fat, or even lower than that, if you want to continue gaining significant muscle over the long term, you are going to need periods of eating in a net calorie surplus in order for that to happen. And if you're obsessed with being lean, the slightest little blur on your abs causes you to have an anxiety attack, you refuse to bump your calories up at all, any increase on the scale mentally upsets you, then yes, as the video title says, that is going to kill your gains. You'll keep your leanness, but you're not going to add any real size, and your strength gains are also going to be significantly compromised. Now, all of that said, that does not mean that you need a massive calorie surplus to make solid gains, and it doesn't mean that you need to get fat during the process, not at all. Dirty bulking is a complete waste of time and effort. I've been there and done that, and I can tell you it's not the route you want to go. And I don't need to tell you that because you can just clearly see for yourself right here that, again, that is not the road you want to go down. Your body can only use a limited amount of calories per day for building new muscle. Anything beyond that will just be stored as fat, and you can stay relatively lean while you gain muscle as long as you go about it properly. So if by gaintaining or maingaining, we're talking about a small calorie surplus, maybe anywhere from, let's say, 100 to 300 calories above maintenance, depending on the individual, then I would completely agree with that approach, because that should be a high enough amount to build muscle optimally, or let's say at least close to optimally, but it will be small enough that body fat levels will be kept under control. They will increase to some degree, but it's gonna be so minor and it's gonna happen so slowly that you're gonna see it happening from a mile away, and you can just adjust your approach and modify things as you go. So this really all depends on what someone's precise definition of gaintaining actually is. But in any case, even though a surplus will be necessary if you want to make significant gains once you're already decently lean, it's also not mandatory that you do a long drawn out phase in a calorie surplus followed by a long drawn out cutting phase. You don't necessarily have to go 3 months or 6 months doing a longer term bulk and then spend maybe 8 or 12 weeks or whatever doing a cut. You can definitely do that if you want. There's nothing wrong with it. You know, if you're making consistent gains, you've got that muscle building and strength gaining momentum, and you're comfortable with your body fat levels during the process, and you don't mind maybe cutting for a bit longer down the line. If you're okay with that, then by all means do that. But the other option, if leanness is a priority for you, and also preferably if you do have a bit more experience, so that you can really implement this effectively, what you can also do is just run shorter surplus and deficit cycles. So eat in a calorie surplus for several weeks rather than several months. Keep an eye on your body fat levels. Once you've gotten a bit softer than you'd like, drop into a quick deficit, strip off the excess fat, and then just rinse and repeat. You know, I don't see anything wrong with that approach as long as you execute it properly and you truly give yourself those periods with a definite surplus. If you're training a solid and you're eating enough protein, then by doing that, you should be able to consistently gain muscle while staying relatively lean over the longer term. But you'll just have a slight ebb and flow in your body fat levels rather than trying to keep them perfectly stable all the time. Now, it's hard to assign an exact time frame to this because a lot of it will just come down to improvisation based on your individual needs and preferences, okay? There's no need to say from the outset that this is precisely how long you're going to be in a surplus for, and this is precisely how long you're going to stay in a deficit. I would say just play it by ear and then run a quick deficit whenever you feel like it's appropriate. And the duration and the size of that deficit is going to depend on exactly what degree of leanness you're aiming for, how much fat you've put on, as well as your own preferences in terms of whether you prefer faster or slower cuts. But for example, if you are going to use a shorter term approach like this, it could be anywhere from, let's say, 3 to 6 weeks in a small surplus, and then anywhere from maybe 1 to 2 weeks in a deficit. But really, that's just a rough estimate because there are so many different ways that you could ultimately do this. And one method that I'm personally experimenting with, something I've never done before, but that is to eat in a small calorie surplus, around 200 above maintenance or so, focus on gaining, monitor things, and then based on how my physique is looking body fat wise, here and there, I'll just add in anywhere from 1 to 3 days of what's called a protein sparing modified fast, which is where you eat in a larger calorie deficit and you pair it with very high protein, with the idea being to quickly drop some excess body fat while maintaining the muscle and then go right back to your surplus again. And I'll report my experience with that after I've been doing it for a while here. If you found this advice helpful and you want to learn exactly how to tie this all together as far as an actual step-by-step eating plan goes, so the proper number of calories that you need, the macronutrients, recommended food choices, and other factors as well, so that you can gain muscle while staying lean or lose fat if that's your primary goal, then make sure to check out my complete body transformation blueprint over at quiz.seannell.com because that'll get you started with both the proper nutrition plan as well as the proper workout program that you need based on your current condition, goals, and experience level. You can click up here for that or use the link in the description box below. On the supplementation side of things, you can also visit realscienceathletics.com to check out my research-supported, no BS formulas to fully streamline your program and optimize your muscle building and fat burning results. The link for that is also in the description. And you can use coupon code YouTube15 to save 15% off your entire first order. As always, make sure to hit that like button, leave a comment down below, and subscribe if you haven't already in order to stay up to date on future videos. Follow me over on Instagram for more tips and updates, and I will see you guys in the next video.